Good morning, guys. It's Saturday, October 30th. My name is Dave Coker, and this is Talking About Finance. Now, as we do, we always start out by taking a look at the S&P 500, look at the U.S. markets, just to see what happened last week. Not a bad week, really, up about 1.33%. Welcome news after September's correction, 5.2% drop. S&P 500 is actually up about 6.6% for the entire month. So well done there. That's actually pretty good if you're long. We saw a broad market advance across both growth and value stocks. And this is surprising because both Amazon and Apple missed. The VIX pushed up to 17 midweek, but it closed at 16.25. So we're still seeing people sort of relaxing. They're not too nervous. And we're running into the end of year Santa Claus rally, which should take place the last 2 weeks or so of December, but we're setting the stage for it. The 10-year closed at 156, so it's relatively unchanged from last week. There seem to be three factors driving stocks. First of all, the reopening is progressing, and this is global, not just the United States. In fact, the US is lagging behind many European nations, the UK, for instance. So reopening's helping. Q3 earnings are better than the street estimated, and Mr. Biden's tax plan has died the death it deserves, at least from the corporate taxation perspective. I don't quite get what is going through these people's head. The last thing the Western democracies in general, the US specifically, needs at this point in time is a tax hike. No, interest rates are going up, the economy's still recovering, and he wants to increase taxes. Yeah, sure, that's fine. Okay. All right, let's take a look at something that you might be interested in. Now, we focus a fair amount on the S&P 500 because it's a broad index, and you really want to be putting a good chunk of your wealth into an index fund, a cheap index tracking ETF. But could you do better? Oh yeah, without a doubt. So we've got the S&P Growth at Reasonable Price ETF, and we're comparing it over the past 5 years to the S&P 500. And we can see that the S&P 500, nice, impressive return, 113%, effectively doubled your money in 5 years, more than doubled your money. But look at the S&P 500, the S&P Growth at Reasonable Price Fund, up some 193%. So that's pretty epic. And yeah, you can always do these things a little bit better. It's interesting. One question is, we're starting to see freight rates drop, and hopefully they're going to come down real fast. Somebody DM'd me and asked, now that we're starting to see prices drop, is stuff going to get cheaper? No. No. Don't be fooled by that. We'll see slight drops in price. But the thing you got to think about, guys, and this is what I find so offensive about the Fed and other people talking about how inflation is transitory, they're being disingenuous. Think about this. Sure, shipping rates are going to fall, but we also know that wages were one component of inflation. So are you going to take a pay cut when they say that inflation's gone, it was transitory? No, you're not going to take a pay cut. People aren't. So wage levels have risen, and that's interesting. So we're not going to see this drop significantly. To put it in context, here we are in 2021. And what we're doing here, this is off Bank of America, actually. You can see here it's an annualized 6-month CPI measure. So we measure CPI over a trailing 6 months, and then we annualize it to 12-month equivalent. And check this out. The reason it's so painful is that we haven't seen this in quite a while. So we're running at about 7.8% in terms of CPI right now. So it's really fast and furious. And put it in context, it is one of the bigger rises we've seen. Not over the entire period. It's not as bad as, say, March of 80 or 48, but it's still pretty epic in terms of what we're seeing. So we'll have to see how this goes because people are being punished by inflation. Recall, I mentioned that Ronald Reagan called it a thief that comes in the night. And we know it disproportionately impacts the poor. And I don't like it at all. Here's one that the media is really ignoring. They're talking about natural gas a lot. They don't look at propane. Now, being a country boy, I can tell you a lot of people out where I grew up, Wrights Corners, New York, represent, if you're in the audience. 40 people, more cows than people. But we heated our trailer with propane. And a lot of people who have rural homes, they're too far from the grid, the network of underground gas lines. So they have to buy a tank of propane. And sure, you get a 500-gallon tank, you can heat your house and run most of your appliances off the propane for the entire winter. Unfortunately, look at the prices. This is the season when people are just stocking up. So they tend to buy this stuff in the autumn. Yeah, It's terrible. We're going to be seeing huge increasing. And unfortunately, we know that some people, sadly, they're going to have a choice. Either they're going to heat or they're going to eat. And it's just tragic that we're starting to see prices really run up like that, or right at the time when people do need this stuff. And here's one that's fascinating. I just replaced a boiler up north. As I've shared with you guys, I've got a property business. Had to get a boiler up north replaced. And it was curious. I was wondering because the tradesmen required that they take the copper boiler. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I knew copper prices were up. And this came through the Telegraph channel. It's like, I thought, oh, you guys, right? Because, yeah, this is why they wanted it. Because we saw copper is really surging. And apparently, when you go to these metals dealers, they're giving real eye-popping sums. So it's okay. We negotiated a little bit on the transaction because I never pay what tradesmen want. Rarely. I mean, I got guys down here in London that I trust very much. They just replace my faucets. I don't question them. But anybody remote like that, we're going to be carrying out an inquiry into your quotation, because what they love to do is just put over a number. It's going to be £1,000. Excuse me, 1,000. What's the detail? And then if they get offended, they just leave. But aside from that, this is why they grabbed it. Now, this is an interesting one, guys. Now, something happened with the top of the chart. What we're doing is we're looking at wages, and we're looking at it over the period up to 2019. And we've got it broken down in three areas. Now, we were talking about this on the Telegram channel. We'd love to see updated data, because I bet that low end is really lifting. It doesn't mean the high end, the top 10% of earners. That's what they're defining as a very high wage. Doesn't mean that they're not getting more increases as well. But I bet at the low end, we're going to see some big increases when this is updated. Well, I'll look for an updated copy and keep you informed, because we do know that these people, and again, it's one of these things that you just feel sorry for people, because they had to work during pandemic. They were called key workers. Yeah, they did keep the wheels turning. I mean, we ate here because of key workers. You know, we ate here in the UK and the US as well, and they're just not treated right. And now they're getting some wage increases, which is it's overdue, in my opinion. It's actually good. And I don't really mind paying a little bit more if people at the lower end can take better care of themselves. But yeah, we'll have to see how this changes over time. Still, an interesting question is, why do governments hate Bitcoin? And I think you guys are switched on enough. It really comes down to control. They just can't control it. This is a fascinating chart. I like to trot this out periodically just for the broad picture. And I distinctly remember, as I mentioned to you guys, we've been buying Bitcoin every Friday for years. And I remember when it was below 100, I remember distinctly in 17, that was a wild year when it pumped from below 1,000 up to over 17,000. And then we entered that period called crypto winter, and I kept the faith, just kept buying. But presently we're over here on the right-hand side of the chart, and it's trading a little bit higher this morning, about 62 and change. Why do governments dislike it? I think we know. They dislike it because they can't control it. Full stop. And they are trying to devise ways to control the on-ramps and to tax. And again, I don't mind paying taxes. I shared with you guys that I did 3 experimental trades just to register with a dealer, a CoinPass. I'll mention them. They're good guys, and they're FCA registered. And I did 3 small trades, 5/100ths of a Bitcoin, just to see if I could push the whole thing through and get the money in my account, and my bank wouldn't freak out. And it worked, because Bitcoin's surging and you're not totally sure. But I'm not selling in any case. I'm just going to hold on. We're expecting to see Bitcoin, or we're hoping to see Bitcoin rise in the future. We'll have to see. Oh yeah, and follow this up. This is from last week. One of my friends, I think she's out in LA, on the Telegram channel. I'm not quite sure where that was. Canada maybe, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter. Sent over this picture. We talked about Floki last week, and look at this. I was surprised to see they're advertising on the Tube in London. Apparently it's a global thing. They're pumping a lot of money into marketing. Guys, if you don't know what a rug pull is, you don't need this crypto. Buy Bitcoin, just like the good Lord intended, right? I'm not really sure about Floki, and I don't mean to sound like I'm bad-mouthing the developers. I just don't, they're advertising on buses and tubes, and it's like everyone's looking for additional ads now, and that is sort of an interesting sign. But on the other hand, I will say I went to their website and looked, and they've got a very fascinating ecosystem, and it's actually performed really well so far, the currency. So I don't know, every now and then I say, maybe I'll put 100 quid in and just see what happens. Because, we've heard stories about the guy who put $8,000 into Doja. a while ago. Or no, Shina Ibu about a year ago. And now it's worth 5.4 billion. So who knows what could happen. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Once again, you're going to have an incredibly profitable week. Stay long, keep the faith. We're coming into the end of the year, and markets are going to start to stabilize and actually run up even further. So hopefully this volatility is going to go away. We won't see a repeat of the 5% correction. I'm fully invested at this point. You should be too. Take care.